Today, this is all about wheeling dirt bikes. There's many different ways that you can wheelie a dirt bike. I'm going to show you 3 today. The first one's just going to be your basic seated wheelie. So if you've never really wheelied a motorbike before, this is how you can get a basic wheelie out of it with control, nice and safely. Your next one, it's going to be your basic clutch pop wheelie. So lower speed, learning how to just pop that front wheel up off the ground, put it back down again with maximum control. This one's really, really important for riding in the bush. More hard enduro techniques, getting up over obstacles, that sort of thing. And the last one we'll go through is a really fun one. Big, high, low speed balance wheelies. So maybe scraping that back mudguard on the ground, getting the front wheel nice and high, being able to hold the front wheel up, minimum speed, controlling that bike. Really good practice exercise, obviously a lot more advanced, but really good for working on your clutch control, your balance, and just your calibration on the back wheel, which really pays off for your hill climbing, that sort of stuff. So 3 different techniques, different scenarios where we're going to use them, and different sort of challenges, different levels of difficulty. So this is part of our Say No to Slow dirt bike coaching series. We've put a lot of time and effort in this. It's a really good series, a whole bunch of techniques from the actual ground up all the way to more sort of advanced hard enduro techniques. And that's available at saynotoslow.nz. Everybody's got a story about wheelies going bad. If you don't have one yourself, you definitely know someone that's got some bad wheelie stories. We've all seen those brilliant YouTube videos of whiskey throttle, people looping out, getting out of control, launching across the fields.
And I broke it. I broke the back fender already.
We don't want that stuff to be happening. So some safety stuff before we get into it. Number 1 is your clutch. Motorbikes will not loop out backwards with the clutch in. They won't roost off across the paddock, into the fence, into your truck, down into a ravine with the clutch in. So the whole time we're doing this, it's really important that we have at least 1 or 2 fingers resting on that clutch lever. The big thing, if your whole hand is gripping the bars, when you get a bit out of control, when you get behind the balance, you feel that sort of whiskey throttle stuff starting to come in, if you're not covering the clutch, it's going to feel like you have to let go of some of your grip of the bars. When you're panicking, when you're freaking out, your brain's not going to let you do that. Your brain's just going to tell you to grip that bar even stronger, even tighter. This is going bad, hold on tight. But if your finger's already on that, already resting on that clutch, pull that clutch in, kill the drive, all the problems go away. The other safety thing that's really important here is, of course, your back brake. The slightest tap of the back brake when you're in your wheelie, clutch in, back brake on, the front tire's going to come straight back down to earth. Nothing works better. Jumping off the back, trying to run along behind it, that's not going to help you out very much. If you feel any loss of control, any panic, if the front wheel's up too high, clutch comes in, slightest tap of the back brake, wheelie is done. No going over backwards, no snapping mud guards, no whiskey throttle off across the field. Okay, so our most basic wheelie, our starting point. If you've never wheelied a motorbike before, this is how to do it. So sitting down, so we want to be a little bit further back than central on the bike. So if this is the middle of the bike, we want to be back in about here. Obviously we want more weight to the back of the bike, let the front come up, more traction for the rear. We don't need to be hanging right at the back. If we do that, it's going to be really hard to control the bike once it comes up onto the back wheel. Elbows nice and wide. Head comes forwards, drive your head back. So it's normal seated position in here, forwards, back. Just trying to create that lightness in the front, throwing your head back to there. Get used to that to start off with. Do what I'm doing here. Sit the bike on the stand, trying to create that compress, lift. Getting that rock of weight backwards to make the front light, make it come up. You want to practice that until it's boring on the stand. So it's really familiar, nothing to worry about. Good consistent movement, you're getting it right every time. Once it's boring on the stand, start your bike, second gear, cruising on the paddock, not trying to do wheelies yet, just getting used to doing that movement without any big throttle inputs, anything like that. Just getting used to that movement, make it a really familiar, not scary thing. All right, the handguards are off. That is the level of commitment I'm bringing to this video series. So once you've got that body movement pretty familiar, you need to start bringing in the power. So if you're on a higher horsepower bike, so like this KTM 300, you'll be able to do this entirely on the throttle. On a lower horsepower bike like 125s, 85s, that sort of thing, you're going to need to create that pop with your clutch. So for the higher horsepower bikes, your head's going to come forwards, and as you start to push back, rap, a zap of power, rap. Again, if it's too much, if it's scary, don't worry too much about shutting your throttle, just concentrate on grabbing that clutch. That's what's going to keep you safe. It's all about that clutch. On the smaller bikes, lower horsepower bikes, again, we're going to need to create that pop, that lift, using your clutch. So as your head comes forwards, as you start to rock forwards, you're going to pull your clutch in. You're going to build up a bit of RPM in the engine. Then as you start to fire back, push back through your arms, clutch comes out. So you're creating that power, that lift through your clutch rather than just doing it on your throttle. Big bikes, just the throttle. Little bikes, clutch and throttle. So the timing here is really important. You want to be getting that power right from the very bottom of that suspension compression. If it's not working for you, you're going to have to change timing. So don't be afraid to experiment with this a bit. Try giving it the power a little bit earlier. Try giving it the power a little bit later. Don't just keep making the same mistake over and over again. If it's not working for you, change when you're giving it that power. That'll help you find that timing. Important as well as how you're using that throttle. So if you're just gripping normally like that, when you got to give it that handful, it's likely that your elbow's going to drop, your shoulder's going to drop. That's going to put you out of balance when you're on the back wheel. So we need to do a pre-grip. So instead of gripping in dead flat like that, we're coming in forwards and getting ready to give it that throttle. So you're coming into there, so when the power's on, you're in your good body position, in your good, nice straight shoulder, elbow, wrist, all that sort of stuff. So it's a pre-grip. Cool. So once we're up on the back wheel, once we've got the front wheel up, we're balancing it obviously this way with our throttle. More throttle, higher the front wheel, less throttle, lower the front wheel. And we're trying to make that really smooth, so it's not rap, 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 rap. It's just rolling that power on nice and smoothly. Trying to be as controlled as you can with your throttle. Balancing the bike left to right, that's all done through your shoulders. Moving your shoulders from side to side to create that balance, control the bike left to right, all through there. So smooth, gentle throttle to balance the bike and the height of the wheelie. Shoulders moving from side to side through there to balance the bike and the body, keep the wheelie going straight. If you're struggling with that and the front wheel's not coming up, you can try a little trick, which is as you start to compress down into that suspension, as you start to push forwards, try dragging a little bit of front brake. That'll compress that front fork. As you fire back, that'll make the front dip, then release, making it a lot easier to lift the front wheel up. Obviously, as you bring up the speed, that's not going to be the best idea, but lower speed sort of stuff, it's a good way to kind of get a bit more lift out of that front end. So a little bit of drag of that front brake, and then release it as that power comes on. So our next technique's a really, really useful one. It's your basic clutch pop wheelie, just being able to lift that front wheel up, lots of control, minimum amount of acceleration. This is a really good one to have in your bag of tricks, just being able to lift that front wheel up for that drain, lift it up for that bog, lift it up for that obstacle log, whatever it is, with the minimum amount of acceleration is the goal. So there's two sides to this again. There's the engine and the clutch side of it, and then there's the body movement side of it. We'll practice the body movement side of it, we'll practice the engine and the clutch side of it, and then we'll put those two skill sets together, time it all in the right way, and we're going to get a nice controlled clutch pop wheelie. So we want to be doing this one standing up. When we're actually, wheeling over obstacles on the trail, that sort of thing, we need to be standing up for that. So normal standing position, one of the things we cover off in the whole series. And about here, we're going to come up, and our body movement is stomping, compressing down into your foot pegs, loading down into your pegs to compress that suspension, to put all that energy into the springs, to get that energy back in lift. So normal standing position in here, up, loading down into your pegs, and you're really trying to focus it through your foot pegs, not through your handlebars. If I focus on my handlebars, I don't get anywhere near the same amount of compression, and I don't get that drive, that push down into my back tire, so it's way more likely that my bike's going to wheel spin. So don't worry too much about your arms at this point, focus it all down through your legs. And a good way to think about it is you're trying to stomp jump onto your foot pegs. So, and here, compressing down into those pegs. So again, you want to practice that body movement, that stomp down through your foot pegs to the point where it almost feels boring. So don't settle for, oh yeah, I've kind of sort of got this. Get it absolutely nailed. Once you got that sorted, start working on the engine and the clutch side of it. And what we're basically trying to do is create like a clap, a really quick spike of power. If we do this with just the throttle, leave the clutch alone and just go rap, we're going to get a slow wheelie. The front wheel's going to come up slowly, slowly, slowly. That's going to turn, all that acceleration time is going to turn into ground speed. So by the time we actually get the front wheel up, we're going to be going too fast to deal with our obstacle, drain, hole, whatever it is we're actually trying to wheelie over. So the goal here is to be able to lift that front wheel up really quickly, which results in the minimum amount of acceleration, minimum amount of speed increase when that back bike's up on that back tire. So again, we're doing that through that spike of power with the clutch. So clutch comes in, building up a bit of revs in the engine, burp. Then as we start to feed that power into the clutch, we're spiking the throttle with it. So it's clutch in, burp. And again, we're only after that clap, that spike of power. So it's clutch out, clutch straight back in again to control it. Burp, burp, burp. To practice this, start off sitting down, burp, burp, and it's going to make the bike wheel spin and squirt dirt out the back. We haven't got that compression into the tyre yet to make the traction, but I want you just to get really familiar with that spike of power through your clutch and your throttle working together. Start off doing that sitting down. Once that's boring, do it standing up. That might turn into a few little wheelies. Try to reduce that as much as you can at this point. Really just focus on that power release. Once you've got that stomp, that compression dialed in, that's feeling really comfortable and confident. Once you've got that wrap, that spike of power through your engine and your clutch, confident, it's time to put the two together. So the timing of this is absolutely everything. As we start to come up to do that compression, the clutch comes in, building up a bit of revs in the engine, and as you're loading down into your foot pegs, we're starting to feed that clutch in. At the absolute bottom of your suspension compression, when your tire and your suspension is compressed as heavy as it can possibly be, pop, the clutch comes all the way out at that point. So the timing of this, perfect timing, is tire and suspension as compressed as possible, boom, power comes out then. If you can't do perfect though, a little bit too early on the clutch is generally more effective than a little bit too late. You've got to think about the loading in your tire. So if you've hit that maximum point of compression and you still haven't put the power on, the tire is going to get progressively lighter and lighter and lighter as you're winding that power on. That's guaranteeing wheel spin. If you're a little bit too early with that power, maybe you haven't quite hit that maximum compression yet, but the power is on. When you hit that maximum point of compression, it's going to dig, it's going to lift, you're going to get your wheelie. So by all means, perfect is timing is from the absolute bottom of that compression. If you can't do perfect, generally a little bit too early on the clutch is more effective than a little bit too late. So using the rear brake can help to make that compression a bit easier, get a bit more out of it. So the idea is you've got your toe just gently covering the back brake. As you compress down into it, your foot's going to naturally rock round a bit, which will start to drag that back brake on a bit. The idea is at this point, you actually got your clutch in anyway, you're reducing that clutch input. As you fire it back to release that compression, the back brake's going to come off pretty much automatically with it. So you don't have to think about this too much, more than just have your toe covering that back brake. And it should sort of just drag a little bit, help with that compression, and it almost happens automatically. Again, safety stuff, just remember, the bike's not going to go over backwards with the clutch in. So the clutch comes out, clutch comes straight back in again to control it, not over rotating. Try to keep your head up, keep looking down your imaginary trail as you're practicing this. You don't want to be riding along, staring at the ground in front of you. Find yourself something to look at that's going to make your balance way more effective. All right, number 3, the low speed controlled balance point wheelies. The technique for picking it up, getting into that is exactly the same as the ones we've already practiced. You can do this either sitting down or standing up, but we've got to get that front wheel really, really high, get onto that balance point and be able to hold it there. The balance point of a motorbike's really freaking high. That front tire is going to be really high. We want to be doing this nice and slowly. There's a pretty good chance that you're going to crash doing this whilst you're trying to figure it out. You're going to go over backwards, you're going to drop it, but you're not going to be going fast. If you've got any brains, you're not going to be doing it in a rocky, horrible paddock. You find somewhere really, safe to do it, like this, nice soft grass here. And basically what we're doing is popping that front wheel up, holding that front wheel really high and playing around with clutch input versus back brake. Obviously, the more power you give it, the more clutch you give it, the more it's going to want to rotate backwards. The more back brake we give it, the more it's going to want to rotate downwards, forwards. So it's really important to get into the habit of just gentle inputs. So you're not stabbing the back brake, you're not stabbing the clutch. Little tap of the back brake, little drag of the back brake, little gentle inputs of the clutch. And you're basically balancing back brake and clutch together to hold as close as you can to that balance point. Sitting down, when you're doing them sitting down, you're going to be rocked back quite a long way, trying to get that weight more towards the back of the bike, lean back into it. That's going to kind of lower the overall balance point of you and the bike. When you're standing, hanging right out the back of it in there, arms are going to be relatively straight, heels are going to be dropped a bit, and you're going to feel a lot of strain through your arms. You're going to basically feel like you're hanging off the handlebars. The standing up one is probably harder to do than the sitting down. So to be honest, I use the seated low speed wheelie for showing off in the car park. It has virtually no real use out on the trail. The standing up low speed wheelie, that's really good for kind of getting that balance and that feeling of holding the weight into the back tire for hill climbing. So I'll be honest, I've never ridden a trail where I'm like, man, if I can just get the back mudguard on the ground, this would be so much easier. But the skill set involved in being able to hold that balance and control on the back wheel, I use that in my hill climbing, all sorts of stuff out on the trail. So it is, it's showing off, it's good fun to do. It looks cool, but it does actually have some payoff as well. So for your standing up low speed wheelie, same compression, same lift, all that sort of stuff that we did in the normal wheelie just before, the second technique. So again, pop, hips come back to there and they stay back here. So the bike kind of rotates out underneath you more and you clutch and then grab and catch it with the back brake. So to start off with, that's your practice exercise, just picking it up, letting the bike rotate back and then learning to catch it on that back brake. Again, do that lots. You're not aiming to hold it forever, just boom, catch it. Pick it up, catch it. Pick it up, catch it. Once you're doing that, then that's familiar and it's not scary anymore. That catching and input in the back brake becomes softer and softer and softer. So it's gently catch it with the back brake and then you can hold it along without the front end come crashing back down again. So it's really about getting dialed into that back brake and catching it on that back brake. So once we're up there on the back wheel, again, the knees are bent and we're using your hips and your body weight to create that balance. Hips are a really big part of it. Swinging through your hips like that to create that balance to keep the bike pointing where you want it to go. So for balancing your seated one, you can also use your knees. So you're moving your weight around subtly, balancing it through opening either leg to try and move that weight balance around a bit. And of course your head and your shoulders as well, all whilst planted on the back of the seat. So the key with these balance point wheelies is really gentle, subtle inputs. It's quite hard to control the panic reflexes just to stab that back brake and then it's just going to come crashing back down again. So really important, very, very gentle controlled inputs into that back brake. So it's dab, 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 tap, 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 not stomp, stomp, stomp. Well, you're not going to get stomp, stomp, stomp. You're only going to get one stomp and show's over. More than likely, you're probably going to go over backwards a couple of times figuring this out. I did many, many times, but that's all part of the fun. So if you learn anything there, there's a whole bunch more to be learnt by checking out the Say No to Slow dirt bike training series. We've got probably over 100 tips. We've got 3 hours of footage, 18 episodes all put together. Basically everything I know about riding dirt bikes all put into one series. You can check that out at saynotoslow.nz.